I put out some new music in early December. I'm working on some new music right now. I'm going to put some finishing touches on the song this week.
How does that work? You work with T. Hayes, is that his name?
Yeah.
I've met that guy before. What's his real name?
Todd Hayes.
That's right. Oh, that's where he got his name from, I see.
Yeah. Maybe I should just come down here. He'll send me some stuff when I'm in New York or whatever, and then I'll just come down here and we'll work on it together.
Do you record it in New York on your own?
No, I usually record with him, although I'm going to do some recording in New York. I bought all the equipment and then just never got around to setting it up because I've been so busy.
So you live in Reno sometimes, or you work out here sometimes, but you live mostly in New York, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That is I can't think of, besides super rural places, as far as it just seems to me as different as cities as can be.
They are really different. But I don't know, I like it, and I kind of think that difference is really nice and healthy for me in a way, especially because there's all the buildings and everything in New York, and you don't really get to see much sky and stuff like that, and I think it's nice to have that out here, and to have everything. Well, what's really interesting, I guess, is that everything is close in Reno and everything is close in New York, so that's something they have in common, kind of.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. And is that just from, there's so much, variety?
Yeah, in New York there's so much that everything is close. In Reno, everything is just, actually close.
Yeah. The one, because I've never been to New York, which is I feel kind of silly about, but I've never been to New York, but I've been to Philly a few times, and, when I'm walking around, I'm like, there's cookie shops! Yeah. Open at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Every 5 blocks. There's the most specific thing. And then here it's it's 11 o'clock and you're not getting good food
so
unless you go get pizza.
Hope you want to starve. So yeah, no, I feel you. That's kind of tough about Reno, and something that I always find myself. Although I will say it kind of varies from borough to borough, because when I lived in Queens, for example, it's after a certain time, pretty early in the night, it was you're not eating anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, except for Domino's.
Okay.
It's sinister.
Where do you live now?
I live in Riverdale, which is kind of on the border of the Bronx and Yonkers. It's by Van Cortlandt Park. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just goes all. It's I have no idea.
Yeah,
I really want to go there. Well, it's just so interesting. New York's obviously where so many movies take place, and so it's this thing people have so many ideas about,
Yeah, that's true. I remember before I moved there, I was so afraid because I didn't know how the subway really worked, and it wasn't even that I was afraid I would get lost. I just thought the subway was kind of like a giant centipede, where everything was linked, and it was just filled to the brim with people constantly, and I was terrified of that. But it turns out that it's really not like that. It's separate train cars for one thing, which should have been obvious to me.
Oh, you thought it was one?
Yeah, one awesome. Super long thing. And sometimes there are a lot of people on the train, and sometimes there isn't. Obviously, that varies. But also, nobody cares. So nobody bothers you really. So I don't know what I was thinking. I just thought it would just be a zone of never-ending chaos and harassment, and really it's not like that at all.
Well, that's kind of how I think of it.
Yeah.
But I did Philly was so fun. That was just my only East Coast experience really. Mm-hmm. So it made me be want to go to New York and all those places too.
Yeah.
Well, how long ago did you move there?
Let's see. So I moved there in September of 2015, and it's now January of 2018. So 2 years and a couple months.
That's sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm really happy about it in a way. The time has kind of just passed. And I spend a lot of time here, so maybe that's why the time seems to just move so quickly.
Yeah.
And so I think when you're in transit a lot, the days kind of just blend together and things like that. But I like it. I've appreciated my time. I think moving to New York was really, really good for my emotional maturity, because you have to. Obviously being separate from everything that you know, you have to reorient yourself and kind of just toughen up. But then also, I think New York requires a lot of patience, and there's a lot of background noise constantly, and I think that impacts your subconscious mind a little bit. And I think that in some way, I don't know if it's true or not, but I think I've developed a lot of emotional resilience and patience as a result of living out there that maybe I didn't have prior to that.
That makes so much sense. Yeah, people in like people in Philly are way different than people in Reno.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like there's not like the same kind of like niceties, and I don't think it's there. No one's being rude, but it's just so like to the point. And I really liked that change. I was just like, oh, this is so nice. Like everyone's just saying how they feel. Like
yeah, and I found since I moved to New York that it's not that I have like less patience for like squabbles or things like that people have. There's like a lot of interpersonal dramas that people develop. And I think that sometimes out here people are maybe bored or understimulated in some way, and so they really center those things in their lives and they want to be in conflict with each other. Well, maybe they don't want to be, but it's just very easy for that to be the main thing going on. And since moving to New York, I just find that I want to enjoy people, and I don't have any patience or like capacity for like. I'm not saying that I don't have conflict. Conflict's a part of life, but I'm really able to get to the point, and then I'm not going to belabor the issue or argue with anybody about anything. I always tell people since I've moved there, and I mean I've always been kind of like this, but I'm now like this more, in that I always tell people I'm not going to argue with you about how I spend my time and my energy. So
that's cool.
So you can either agree with it or you can't, but I'm going to do what I want to do either way.
That's cool. That's really cool. I think that makes a lot of sense what you're saying about the boredom here, and that is like you can, having too much time to yourself. Like I don't know what's like. There's some quote that's like, if you don't feed your brain, it feeds on itself.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, if you're just, I can totally see that. And I've totally been a part of that where it's like, and I've been thinking about that so much recently, is like just how nice like my life is and just like normal things, because I kind of had this big project that I finished and I thought it was gonna like make me happy, whatever. Like there was like a sense of accomplishment, but there was also like, am I just gonna keep making projects? Or am I ever gonna actually look around and like see what's going on? Or am I just like, am I a fucking walking to-do list? Or am I like a person that's trying to, so I've been trying to like not get bored, which has been really fun,
That's good. And I mean, I think that there's something special about boredom in a way, but in limited chunks, I guess. Silence and like just relaxing. I mean, honestly, I love relaxation though, so I don't know if I'm necessarily the best advocate for anti-boredom, because sometimes I'm just like, I want to be bored. And
I guess what I mean is the point of boredom where
you start to be destructive.
Yeah.
And I think I definitely agree with you on that. Because then I think sometimes people try to overcorrect. They're like, oh, I'm so bored, so I start to fight with people, or I start to do a ton of drugs, or I like am out being wild too much, and it's like everything can be a little bit fun, but you just have to make sure that you are not like, I mean, there are times where extremes are necessary, but I don't think that it's that often.
Yeah.
I
know you. It's like I definitely have had those extremes, and they're good, I guess, in a way, if you can come back from.
Yeah.
But there's some things that, like, you can't come back from. Yeah. Like, there's another quote that's like, some guy's like, make sure you don't swim so far out you can't come back.
Yeah.
And I've definitely, like, been there where I'm like, fuck, am I going to be an asshole forever? Like, can I go back and, like, be who I am? And but that's cool. Yeah, I think boredom is so important, especially because you're an artist. Like what do you think like you mostly do, like artistically? Is there a main thing you think?
I mean, obviously, I think that, I think when it comes down to what I do the most of, it's like I definitely write the most. Like that's I think that's the primary vehicle through which I kind of arrive at other forms of art, and that's how I kind of think about art. And I don't even know if to some extent I definitely think about it all as art, but I also think about it as literacy and communication, like storytelling, and that's like kind of, and just experimentation with different modes of being, I guess. Which is kind of like what my music is. It's like I thought, oh, well, how can I try something different? You know, I don't want to sit and write like articles every day of my life or write long screeds on Facebook. Like, let's see, you know, I wanted kind of an excuse to like kind of tap into a new personality. And so that's how that happened. And that's kind of what I find exciting about writing in general, is that I think that you get the opportunity to look at life and relationships and so many different things through an array of lenses. So yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I used to write fiction, and I would always get super into like getting into like the psychology of different characters, and I always thought, okay, I'm not very good at acting, I have terrible memory, but I can really understand the psychology of a character. And so in the future, I mean, I would like to continue like expanding like my writerly abilities. I really wanted to try to write a film or something, but I think that would take me many years to arrive at that, you know, because I'm really like picky and I would hate whatever I produced unless I felt a certain level of mastery over it. I would also really like to start off editing comics and then write them.
That would be fucking awesome.
But I definitely would prefer to edit first, just to get a sense of the, you know, I guess those parts of the medium that you don't really know about when you're only thinking about it as a creative.
Yeah, totally. That's such a especially like when I was younger and stuff, like you don't think like, oh, I don't want to get someone to produce, like I don't need anyone's advice, and you're like, no, like ideas are really good. Yeah. Like the best idea wins in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And you know, go on.
Oh no, please.
I was just gonna say, and I just think that editing is like one of my favorite forms of like of thinking through writing, because it's just like really asking yourself it's all about asking the right question, which is something that I'm really interested in, is like, for example, what is missing here, or what has been forgotten, or what is being said here that's not necessary, and things like that, you know, or what is being used here that would have a better life elsewhere. I love to ask questions like that in writing, you know, and that's why I think, like you were saying, when I was younger and I was making music, I thought, I don't want anybody else involved in the process, it's all about me. Like, and now I try to be a lot more open, because I've run writing workshops and I've gone through writing workshops in prose, and I think, well, there's a lot to be learned from that, you know. Just hearing somebody else like tell you what they're thinking when they're hearing your music or something can be very interesting and liberating.
Totally. Yeah, and that's like the ego just being like, when I've just had times where people have like, and I do think it's kind of silly when people unsolicitedly give you like advice.
Oh yeah.
But like when I've, you know, kind of been in a conversation that would make sense for someone to like say something, I've been like, you know, and you just like get like, you feel it hit this wall, and it's like, well, maybe I should like actually think about that.
Yeah.
You know, examine if that's like a good point or whatever.
Yeah.
Like one time someone like said like, are you still writing really long songs? And I was like, oh, I didn't know I was, but like, and it, you know, kind of like hurt my feelings in a way.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I started writing shorter songs. That was like that was a good idea. Like, I was like, oh, you know what? I could make this a minute shorter. That's a long time. You're doing like with songs. So
yeah, I've had a similar experience, because I remember a friend of mine was like, you know, I really like that, like in all of your songs you rap the whole way through, but can you like write a hook? Like, do you know how to do that? Do you know how to write like a chorus? And I was like, well, I always assumed that I knew how, but now that you mention it, I should probably give it a shot. And I found when I actually tried that, that I don't know if it's necessarily what I want to do in all my songs, but I thought, wow, this is a new avenue for me to create music, and I thought, this is an interesting thing that I haven't done. It's a new sound, so that's exciting.
Heck yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, your music's really melodic. I mean, even like the way you rap is really melodic and stuff. So I was listening to a bunch at work today, and that was just super fun.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never thought about somebody listening to my music, and I don't know, I never think about that.
It's weird,
Where do
right?
people listen to your music, you know?
It is weird when people come up and tell you that. You're like, how come you didn't tell me?
Yeah.
Like, why didn't you message me? You're about to listen to it.
That's funny. Although I need to get better at talking to people about my music. People always like kind of like corner me and they're like, I didn't realize that was you who's making that music. Can you like tell me more about it, or like can we listen more? And I'm just like, you can do it on your own time, please.
Oh yeah, no, I hate when people want to listen to your music with you.
With you, it's
Fuck
like, why?
that.
I feel like you're stripping me. Like, make
Yeah,
it.
it's worse.
It's weird.
On, yeah.
But I mean, maybe there's some value in it. One day I want to be brave enough to do it, but well, it's not even a bravery thing. I guess it's just like it seems clinical in a way. Like you're like they're like I said, they're stripping you or something. I mean, even if they're doing it like lovingly, this sounds horrible, but like even if they're like a fan of you or something like that, it's like, I don't want to sit here with you and do this. Like, except for like if we're at a show and it's fun and it's like a communal thing. But if it's just, and I imagine that there probably are scenarios where you're sitting with somebody and you're just like, oh, well, that's fine listening to this, but I hate to be put on the spot, I guess.
Yeah.
So
yeah, if you're having a listening party, but it's so vulnerable. And then like I watched like this one Rolling Stones documentary, and like they were playing Wild Horses, and like all the bands just like Wild Horses, like they were just like going at it. And like as a kid I was like, oh, that's so weird, they're like listening to their music and they're like super into it. And now I get it. But like when if someone like it's like, let's listen to your music, you're like, cool, and you're like, yes, this is awesome. Like you're like start singing along. Like what you're supposed to do, just sit there and be like, I can't hate this, and I can't love it too much. Yeah. Because if I like start singing along, they're gonna be
they're like, oh, this asshole.
Yeah.
Like, he loves his own music so much, but
Yeah. So I thought that was. I get it now, like why they were singing, because Wild Horse is a fucking great song.
It's exciting.
It's like, sing it, yeah. So, like, have you always gone by Franc Friday, or?
Well, kind of. I mean, I think that when they decided to be a little bit more serious about it, I definitely was Franc Friday. But I think that, like for a while, I was just going by my own name, and that was when I was still in college. And I think I did a show that was preceding my graduation, I think, at some party that Insight Magazine and the Brushfire holds every year. It's the Art Music Poetry Slam.
Oh, cool.
And that was kind of my debut, but at the same time I was like the editor of Insight Magazine, and it wasn't like I booked myself, it was like Wolfpack Radio, like it's like, you should do this, and I was like, I don't really know, and they're like, no, you're doing it.
They just like heard your songs before?
Yeah, because I had released a couple, and I always bring this up, is that for a couple of years before I was making rap music, I was in Bazooka Zoo, that band. Yeah, I was like one of the founding members of that band. I didn't really last very long there, but I did contribute to some of their early music. That's kind of how I started to find my chops as a rapper. And I mean, I don't love what I did at the time, but I do at the same time. Like, it's like, oh, this is really elementary stuff for me, but it was important for me to learn in that way. But I was going by Evyn Tyler, which, I mean, obviously is my name, and then I was like, oh, I'll just go by an acronym, EMT, and I was like, that's clever, because it's like, I'm like bringing rap music back to life, and then I like gave some time to that and some thought to that, and I was like, that's so corny. So I canceled that, and I was like, well, let me think.
I don't think that's bad at all.
And so, oh my gosh, I remember just having this is exactly why I don't smoke weed. I think that I smoked weed at the time and was like giving some thought to that, and I was like, that's really this bad. That's terrible. So, I've always been reading a lot of comic books, and I was thinking a lot about Silver Age comic books in particular, and thinking about J. Jonah Jameson and Peter Parker and blah blah blah, and how a lot of those comic book characters had those alliterative names.
Dude, that's cool.
And then I was like, well, Franc Friday is an alter ego for me, so it was kind of funny, and I was like, well, I'll create I was like, so Franc Friday is like my iteration of Peter Parker.
That's so cool. That's so rad. I didn't know that. That's
yeah,
cool.
And so that's kind of where that all came from. And early on in my music, and I still do it kind of, but not as much. Actually, no, I still do it a lot. So I make a lot of allusions to like comic books and things like that. So that's like a big part of, I guess, the Frank Friday identity. And I always like talk about villainy and things like that in my music. I think that's exciting. But I don't know if Frank Friday, like as a character, is a villain or a good guy. I think kind of more villain though.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And like not like villain in like your like, you know, world domination kind of way, but villain kind of like just like mean.
Yeah, well, there was like a really cool time when like after the Red Hood had come back, and like he was still like killing people with guns, and like Batman was like not okay with that,
like,
but he was like, and now he doesn't do it. Now he's like, oh, I just shoot their arms or whatever. But there was like that short period where he was like an anti-hero or whatever.
Yeah,
but, like I love that in comics too.
Yeah, definitely. Oh man, and the anti-hero thing is has always been like interesting and exciting to me, although in recent years I've definitely like found myself being more interested in, not necessarily more so than anti-heroes, but like more willing to look at like your like straight-laced hero and not find them so boring.
Yeah.
You know, because I think there is something compelling to it, and there have been a lot of times where I'm like, this is, well, like a character, for example, that I think of is like Jean Grey. Mixed bag for me. I think that a part of me will always really, really, really hate that character.
Really? How come?
Just, you know, it's just that I think that she's like, I love her goodness, and I appreciate it, and I love, like, the tragedy of, like, the Dark Phoenix saga, for example, and, like, seeing that goodness corrupted, and, you know, I love how righteous she is, but I also think that a lot of times writers, because Jean Grey is like, I think Jean Grey and Kitty Pryde are like every like nerd boy, like nerd writer's like crush, I think, at some point.
Totally.
It's like, obviously in some ways I'm immune to that, but I just feel like oftentimes the writers and the editors like really bend the universe around in a way to make that so that those characters never make choices that are necessarily difficult morally.
That's a good, I can see that.
And so they're always able to retain their purity even when they're being just uppity and awful. And I think that's particularly true for Jean Grey. Jean Grey is really an obnoxious and self-righteous character that writers really, you know, bend over backwards to make her seem right.
Yeah, it's almost like Emma Frost, and you know way more about the X-Men than I do, but like it's almost like Emma Frost is like that one female character they allow that kind of nuance, like back and forth.
And that level of nuance really comes and goes, but that's why I'm so drawn to that character in particular, especially because among female characters you don't usually get that nuance, and you can always tell when Emma Frost is in the hands of a good writer or a bad one, because it's like when she's in the hands of a good writer, she can make those morally difficult decisions where it's like we're not necessarily supposed to be able to sit comfortably with them, but oftentimes they're logical, and oftentimes they have the result that is like that it's a net positive, or I mean it's something, you know, when I think about Emma Frost as a villain, for example, what makes her a compelling villain for me back in the 1980s during the New Mutants era, and like after she was originally like introduced as your mustache twirling villain, even though at that point she was even interesting, as I remember in her initial appearances during Claremont's run, which was so long and so awesome, but her initial appearances, she was like, I'm not going to fight you X-Men to the death and I'm not going to expose you because that would mean mutually assured destruction, and I have more important things to think about than that. And it's like, that's a great villain, you know, instead of saying something like, oh, you haven't seen the last of me or I'll strike you down and kill you all. She was just like, well, there are more important things in this fight right now. And that was something I thought with the Hellions characters, which were her, like, essentially like her version of the X-Men. If she was like the Dark Mirror to Charles Xavier. She like taught them those same kinds of things where she was like, don't get mad and don't bother getting even, just like retreat and regroup and come back with a more effective strategy and things like that. I always love that about that character, and I think that also made her a wonderful asset to the X-Men when she came over to that side, because I think for years we all suffered under the moral absolutism of Jean Grey and seeing so many of these things just go horribly wrong, where it's like, you know, if somebody just took things a little bit more seriously and realized the stakes were a little bit higher than their self-righteousness, more lives can be saved. And I always found it kind of annoying that Wolverine, and to a very limited extent Storm and Psylocke, were characters who had the opportunity to step outside of that, like, absolutism and do something, like, do things that made us question, you know, question their methods.
They don't really, huh? Like, I'm reading Claremont right now, and like, Wolverine is a good guy.
Yeah.
Like, he may have been bad before, but he's definitely, like, a good guy who smokes cigars.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. He never makes... But I do like that part of it. Like, someone pointed that out on the internet. I heard about, like, how he's... Like, it has all these, like, non-sexual relationships with, like, Jean Grey and with, like, Kitty Pryde and stuff. Mm-hmm. But he is, like, a total good guy. I never thought about that. You're right.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, and sometimes he, like, strays from that, but very rarely. Although I have to say that reading the original Wolverine series that they gave him after, like, you know, when everybody was saying, like, kill off Wolverine, we hate this character, I don't think that people realized that he was deeply unpopular as part of Claremont's run. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you read the letters section, people hate him.
That's hilarious.
And the editors at the time and the writers, like, Wolverine was a passion project of theirs. Like, they refused to let this character go and really believed in him, and because of that he ended up getting a solo series that really kind of rehabilitated the character and gave him more depth. And I think you can see that as you read through the run. It's like, at first Wolverine's character is just so unreasonable, and then he develops more nuance, and they kind of age him, because you don't really see Wolverine without his mask all that often until later in the series, and he's older looking and he's, like, doing different things that demonstrate a certain, like, he's rough around the edges, but it's obviously there's a certain level of maturity there. But returning to the topic of Emma Frost, I always liked about that character, and this became especially apparent during Morrison's run in the 2000s, although and I don't love everything that he did with the character, but I do think that. And I also think that people give Morrison too much credit for the writing of Emma Frost's personality, but he did elevate her to mainstream status. But a lot of the notes he took to make that character, in my view, came from Warren Ellis's depiction of her. But that all being said, what I liked about that character was that she was very human, in the midst of all these, like, godlike people with their, like, moral absolutes and things like that, you know. She was petty sometimes, and she was mean sometimes, even if she was a good guy, and even if she was doing good things, it was like sometimes she, you know, she didn't have a great moral speech to give the bad guy she was beating down. She just had an insult, and I think that was nice, you know, because it's realistic. And I always appreciated about the character that even she could recognize when she was just being just awful. But I think that some writers forget that humanness and that pettiness shouldn't trump in a character like that their intellect and their efficacy. And I always thought that that was something that has gotten more and more lost with the character over time.
Yeah, I can see
that. You know, they just really want to. I think that it's hard for some writers to write feminine characters who make decisions that are like that without relying on, like, a crazy ex-girlfriend trope or things like that. It's like very hard for people to realize that good and nice are not always the same, and mean and bad aren't always the same.
Yeah.
So.
No, totally. That's a good point. So you said, like, you read, like, pretty like
everything.
That's crazy.
Everything.
Did you do it all last year or like?
No, so I read. So I did all of X-Men in the last year.
Okay.
But like I did like the whole family over several years. Like,
That's so
like
crazy.
Excalibur and like X Factor and things
That's
like
so
that.
awesome.
And there was a lot of stuff that I overlooked in the past, like, and then I like decided to go back and I was like, well, I can't miss this because there's a lot more interplay, you know, that I didn't realize. And there was like historical things that I like didn't appreciate when I didn't read everything that I found. Like, for example, the first crossover comic book, you know, people don't ever think about it in this way, but the first like line-wide crossover was Fall of Mutants, which Chris Claremont wrote. You might be reading that right now. Maybe.
No, I'm not there yet.
Okay,
but, yeah.
And so that crossed over almost all of Marvel's books at the time, and nobody had done it. And so it was like all of the X-Men titles, Thor, Spider-Man, like Daredevil, and it was just really interesting. And I think
So did you read like?
And so upon second reading of this, I thought, well, I read this from the X-Men lens only, and then I decided to like expand laterally, I guess, and try to see it from other perspectives. And it's funny because a really interesting factoid, not factoid, but thing that I thought was like an observation I made was that in that Fall of Mutants storyline, and sorry if I'm spoiling it, but it's really old.
Go for it. Yeah, no, exactly.
But there's the Thor crossover for Fall of Mutants. He ends up in a fight with Sabretooth, and it's like, in our understanding of the Thor character now and Sabretooth, there's no way that matchup could even be deemed as something like reasonable.
Oh yeah, he would just like kill him,
destroy him
right?
instantly.
Yeah.
But at that time, like the powers of all the characters were like a lot more conservative, you know.
Yeah.
And I think about Charles Xavier, like most powerful mind on earth, and it's like oftentimes somebody would just hit him with a rock and he'd be done for.
Totally.
He'd be like, I can't use my powers or I could die. Like, and it's like, you got hit with a running rock, and now
that's so true.
and now you can't do anything. Which always made Storm a really interesting character because they were like, well, this character is very, very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Although Storm is another character I also developed a lot more appreciation for in recent history. Last year, I guess I just came to love Wolverine and Storm a lot.
That's cool.
Storm because of that Claremont run, which is largely written with her as the central character, and I think, and it's really, really, really fascinating. Oh man, I love like her story arc, especially when she loses her powers and all that stuff. Like that's awesome.
Like all the stuff with the, what are they called? The
Morlocks, which I think
so
is really
cool.
great. And so I really, really came to enjoy her character last year. I know that they're resurrecting Jean Grey this year. I'm reading that series right now. It's been like a decade or something since Jean Grey Prime has been around. They've had other versions of her around because they just can't help themselves. But she's back, and we'll see. They're giving her own series where she leads a team of X-Men, and I wonder what they'll do with the character. I really have my doubts, and I think that I'm going to be kind of a little bit of a hater either way, because either they're going to have to fundamentally alter the character in such a way that it like rehabilitates the problems of the character, and if they do that, then she's not really Jean Grey anymore. Or she's just going to be deeply annoying in the way that she always has been. But I've been noticing, like we talked about Grand Design over Facebook, it's like they've been doing really interesting things with the character, and I have to admit, in some ways I'm excited, because I think that if they portray Jean Grey more as this like fearsome like being that has always had this like you know, I think that it's interesting to make her more of a being with agency than it was like she's always been a victim who had no choice, you know.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
And I think that it's more interesting if choice is at the center of her narrative, and she chooses not to use her abilities destructively and things like that. And you know, sometimes they touch on that, but oftentimes they don't. Usually she's just like, I hope the Phoenix doesn't happen to me.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because she only had that like brief period where she was in control of the Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
And then like her childhood was her getting, you know, going nuts and being a victim of like her powers, and then when the Phoenix went crazy or whatever, you know, just became more powerful.
Yeah, and you know, and I think that I do tend to appreciate Jean Grey more, and I hope that we get this in the newer books, but we'll see. But I do tend to appreciate Jean Grey more when she is forced into conflict or into any kind of relationship with Emma Frost, because you see that these are two different characters. Like, they're very similar characters in some ways, but it's like Emma Frost's storyline is very much about, you know, being victimized and discovering agency in that. And not always in good ways, you know. And I think that that's really great, whereas Jean Grey is perpetually in the state of, like, bad things are happening to me, why? You know, but... And of course it's more complicated than that. Jean Grey actually has a really, really interesting publication history. And, like, reading, like, the original X Factor run with her, for example, I'm like, this is cool, you know. So there are always flashes of potential in that character, and we'll see if 2018 brings the better part of her out, but we'll see.
Yeah, and wasn't there, like, didn't Emma Frost have the Phoenix Force at one? Wasn't there, like, a point where, like, it blew up and it went into five different people or something?
That was rough. That was rough.
As a fan?
Yeah, that was bad, especially because prior to that, I don't think that that's how that cosmic force works.
Yeah,
so,
it didn't, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, especially because they did so much, like, writing, like, years before that to establish that there was a reason why Jean Grey was chosen to be in, like, she's genetically predisposed to blah blah blah, and then they were like, well, it's actually just a wacky thing that can happen to anyone. And just like, okay.
Oh, yeah, because that was why Rachel could have it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Rachel inherited that, and you know, there's like, I mean, Chris Claremont said that, like, Rachel was always meant to be not necessarily the daughter of Jean Grey, but the daughter of the Phoenix Force.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, funny, right? He loves to come and tell people little stories after the fact. But, you know, later writers that, like, established that Jean Grey is, like, the one true, like, wielder of the Phoenix. And so we'll see if that turns out to be true with this new series, though. I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to, like, just remove that element from the character entirely for a while. I don't think that there will ever be a universe in which we don't see Jean Grey tied to the Phoenix, because writers can't help themselves.
Yeah.
And editors are non-existent, it seems, sometimes.
Well, I've heard Marvel produces twice the amount of books DC does and has half the amount of editors.
Well, I think that sometimes that shows. And that's a shame, because I really like Marvel, but I've noticed, like, serious areas in continuity and scheduling conflicts that happen with their books all the time, where, for example, like, without spoiling anything, I know that the order in which this Phoenix Resurrection series is taking place and the Jean Grey series that was taking place in X-Men Blue, they're all, like, coming out, and it's like, well, because of Phoenix Resurrection, we know that things have happened that, like, it kind of renders anything that's happening in these other two books kind of pointless unless you're only along for the ride.
Yeah, fun, that's interesting.
And it's like, they do that at Marvel so often, where it's like, please hold something back. Just delay a book if you have to, but I don't know.
So, yeah, I just read the first trade of X-Men Gold, and it was cool. Like,
yeah.
It was very just, like, it was very, like, because I've only really read Claremont and Morrison's, it was very, like, if you read those, you would know pretty much exactly what's going on.
Yeah. So, what's really interesting about X-Men Gold, I mean, I think that it's not doing it for some people, but I enjoy it for the most part. And I really enjoyed that opening arc. I thought it was pretty exciting without doing anything stupid or outrageous.
Yeah, I kind of like that they were like, oh, being bald's a mutation. And so, like, the Sentinel's going after, you know, everyone, like, people that are colorblind, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah,
and so I thought that was fun, and I, you know, even though I'm not the world's biggest Kitty Pryde fan, I thought, oh, this is a pretty great development, kind of. And it was good to see Nightcrawler back in action, because he was off the table for a while. I don't remember exactly how that happened. Well, I remember how he died, but I don't remember how he came back. I'm pretty sure it was ridiculous.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere how he came back, and it was very ridiculous. something about like a bunch of little tiny
something like that, which is another part of that where it's like, please stop doing things like this, I beg. Although Claremont definitely has things like that, so I mean, but with him it was like charming. Even when he got very, very whimsical and outrageous, it's like, well, this works. I don't know, but I think that he also has like kind of that veneer of the 1980s to like make things like, when things look kind of like, or when things are kind of goofy and campy, it's like, well, it's of its time, and I can appreciate that.
Yeah, that's such good comics. I mean,
it really is. As a writing, oh my gosh,
no one writes like that.
No,
it's like, so sometimes like it's kind of bad to say this, but like this is going. I'll like flip like a page, and I'll just see like so many words.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, I'm not reading a book right now. Like,
yeah.
I want to go read something that's like I'll go read Saga, which has like 5 words.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, and I love that density, but I know that it became really unpopular.
No, I love it too. I just mean like sometimes I hit it and I'm like, I can't right now. But no one writes like that. No one would.
And I miss it. I really do. I really, really miss that. Because I think that's really. I think that right now, and we'll see what happens, but I think that sometimes Marvel's ex-office has forgotten the heart of like what made people fall in love with the X-Men, and I think that if they just reread those books, they would understand that people were not just drawn to like the explosions or to like, the forum discussions that happened after like a controversial moment. It was the depth of the character, and that like you were given so much opportunity to really care about what was going on with them, not just as superheroes, but as like human beings.
Totally, yeah. Like all the, even like the like Secret Wars, which I only skimmed through, like having that thing where Chris Claremont was like, "Fuck, they made Cyclops fall in love with him." I'm like, all right, well, it's now in my book that like he breaks Kitty's heart, and like all that kind of soap opera stuff in the X-Men. It's like so important, because it is like, I mean, it's so vital too. It's like why people love Game of Thrones, why people love whatever. It's like people love, maybe that's not a very good comparison, but like that soap opera aspect is like so important. Or like how Batman's, I don't know if you read Batman at all, but like,
not really. I need to get into that, but I never. So this is I was thinking about this. I told you that I loved Marv Wolfman's Teen Titans.
Yeah.
Like, for example. And it's like, well, unfortunately, that team is long gone thanks to 800 different reboots of that universe. It's like, and I started reading like Wonder Woman Rebirth or something, I think last year or the year before, I can't remember. And then I think that they've rebooted again since, and it's like, well, I can only do this so many times. Like, I want to read Batman, but I'm like, well, which one do I do? And I've read some like trades and things like that, which definitely are worth my time. But I am kind of like someone who cares about continuity maybe a little bit too much. I don't mind it being changed or anything like that, but I like to see writers have to play within that sandbox rather than just blowing it up and doing whatever they want to do.
Marvel's never done that.
Yeah.
Like they live with all those decisions like, oh, Phoenix became 5 people, like fuck, we can maybe not talk about it, but it might, like if it runs into it, like they unless it's like bad editing, but or a mistake, but like they don't really hide, which is really cool. But just the only thing I was saying about Batman is like he's dating Catwoman.
Oh yeah, I understand that. I'm following that now. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like, oh, like it's this thing like, yeah, no, we all like are super interested in romance. Like everyone is. So, like bring all the levels of the experience and like bring it there. Yeah. So it's not just action, because like when they do that with the X-Men, when it's just action, and they're like he had like the great Emma Frost love triangle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like that stuff is interesting to kids, to everyone.
And that made all of those characters more interesting for everyone. I definitely know that people thought of Jean Grey and Scott Summers as a pretty boring couple before they got blown to smithereens. And I mean, obviously, that elevated Emma Frost profile, and it was really great. Oh, that whole run was really fun to me. I don't love every part of it, but I love it in general. I love it overall, and I think that it was perfectly dramatic and human and bizarre, and it was bizarre in a very realistic way, which I enjoy. Well, realistic as any comic book would be, I guess. Which reminds me, actually, I don't know if you've watched any television, but I've been watching The Gifted, which is that...
Is it good?
Yes, it is, and I seriously had my doubts about it when I first heard it, because had a few different show ideas that they were thinking about. Like, they were like, oh, well, we are going to pitch one for the Hellfire Club, we're pitching one for X Factor Investigations, and we're pitching one for just random mutant underground that's like fighting for survival. And I was like, a lot of those three I'd really like to just cut the mutant underground one. But then that one ended up surviving, and that's the one that they decided to run with. And then I was stunned to find that the people who are writing this show have so much appreciation for the subject matter and for for the history. And it's like, obviously they're not like just writing a straight adaptation, but what they're doing is really digging deep into Polaris is the lead character in that show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the Stepford Cuckoos enter the series at some point and completely turn the show upside down in a really amazing way. They use
totally. Oh,
yeah. Oh yeah. They use the Strucker family, the Nazis, and all that. It's just the Hounds, yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so much Claremont. It's just a love letter.
That's awesome.
It's worth checking out. The first episodes are kind of slow, but I like them. But I understand why some people would tune out. But it's worth watching, and the season finale is actually on tonight. So now you can stream everything. And I've been begging people to watch this show because I was like, we have to get a second season. We have a second season now, so go ahead and go back and stream it from the beginning. But
that's awesome.
It'll be worth it. And I haven't watched it yet, but I'm going to watch it as soon as I go home, is that I understand that this finale is supposed to really, really, just shake the table once more. And so I'm excited to see what they do. And honestly, it's just the continuity nods in that show are so amazing, especially if you're watching it as you're reading the books, because then you're just are they really referencing, this really forgotten storyline? And to your earlier point about the Morlocks, Matt Nix, who is the showrunner, is talking about how he is really attached to exploring more of the Morlocks in the second season, and he was saying, well, we don't, because of the Fox merger, there are a lot of parts of this property that we are kind of cautious about touching, but we have full leeway to really run with things in the Morlocks, and a lot of our
because of the
because the Morlocks aren't there's so many different iterations of the Morlocks and things like that it's he can just take full advantage of that. And I know that early on in the series there was a character that I was like, this seems like a Morlock power. And then I looked it up, and it was he had actually found a Morlock character who died early on in the Fall of Mutants, hasn't ever been resurrected in the comics, and then made it a full character in the show. And I was like, that's the type of shit I like.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. I love, because Caliban was one, right?
Yeah.
And I love it was in Logan. I was like, I didn't know I was in this movie.
Yeah.
It's super pasty, bald dude.
Yeah.
Have you seen Legion at all?
Yes, also a phenomenal show.
What the fuck was that?
I don't even know what to expect from the second season for that.
I'm really curious. Is there a TV show that's as weird as Legion?
I don't think so.
Because it's weirder than Twin Peaks.
And it is
it's
so
way crazy. I haven't seen the new Twin Peaks, the new season, but as far as the early Twin Peaks, it's the craziest shit Legion is.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and it's the way it's filmed and the way it's scored and everything. And it's just this is beyond what you expect from television at all.
Yeah, totally. I love that. The music. Yeah, they begged some. They spent some money on the soundtrack.
I'm trying to think about that sequence when the Shadow King is running amok, in the last couple episodes or whatever, and is possessing each of them or whatever, and it's just crazy music and just beautifully shot. Man, I felt like I was in trouble when I was watching that. Dude. For sure. That was great television.
Yeah, I got scared. I don't really think scary movies are that scary.
No.
I don't get jumpy shit doesn't really do it for me. I wish it did, because I wish I could go and and I have fun at those movies. I don't, but that show I would get scared, and I would want to not look at the screen.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I don't want to look at this.
Yeah.
It's not grotesque. It's just scary.
Disturbing.
It's about I've dealt with depression and anxiety and stuff. And it's obviously different than what he's going through, but that same kind of idea where it's like this uncontrollable thing that's like fucking with you, and it's not you, but it's like,
Yeah.
you know, it's like a, I don't know, it just was cool.
Yeah.
I really love that
I
show.
really love that. And I wonder, what I'm wondering now is like if there will be any interplay between the Gifted and Legion or anything. I know that the Legion writers really went out of their way to make it a separate thing, but we'll see.
Yeah, with it coming back, because what do you think about the merger? Like with what's
Well, I
going
mean, I
on?
think it's probably bad from the perspective of media companies should not be so large.
Yeah.
But from like, oh, and then I fear for some of the creative latitude of these properties. Although, because I hear oftentimes that, like, for example, the relationship between editors and writers and like sales, I guess, like corporate, has changed since like Marvel was purchased by Disney, where like kind of like orders come down from corporate and then editors basically just have to tell writers like, you have to do these things in your story and figure that out. And I think that's not good, because I think you see it in the quality of the stories all too often. In a bad way.
Yeah, I think, I don't know what run it was, but like Jeff Lemire got like told recently, like,
oh yes, I was referencing that conversation too, actually.
It's just like, no, you have to do this, and that's not cool.
But there's no point.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's a shame, I mean, and you can see it in some of, like, how some of the stories of the characters are so drastically, like, it just, the decisions they're making don't make any sense, except for that you know that it has to happen.
Yeah.
And I hope that that's not what happens with their television shows in their and because honestly, what I do love about the merger is, like, for example, shows like The Gifted and Legion have a greater opportunity to survive and and like those universes now have the ability to be expanded. Am I somebody who's clamoring for the X-Men to be folded into the Marvel Cinematic Universe? No, not at all.
Me either.
In fact, and I don't mean to bash it or anything, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe isn't really my cup of tea.
Yeah,
and I think that X-Men stories tend to be a little bit more sophisticated and mature and emotionally interesting than a lot of things. And so I would like for them to be in their own world. And I don't know that we have room for a nuanced story about race and oppression and blah 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 in an Avengers movie where it's just filled to the brim with banter that's really fun,
Yeah, totally. Totally, yeah, and I think they would do great with Fantastic Four.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's perfect for their aesthetic, but like, yeah, Logan would never have gotten made under Disney.
No.
And that's one of the, like, straight up one of my favorite movies ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that movie is really fucking good.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's a movie that got made.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you're like, okay, well, that's all out the window. Like, the kind of like standalone doesn't really matter. I mean, the continuity is there, but like, they're gonna bring it all into that same. And I like it sometimes. Like, I liked Guardians 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna like take a bullet for those movies, but I like them a lot.
Yeah.
They're the best version of that brightness.
Exactly.
Like,
but is it something that you can really love with the same depth as the X-Men? I don't know.
Yeah.
I know I can't. But my other thing though is part of me is kind of excited about this, provided that they don't try to fold too much of it into the cinematic universe. Is that the X-Men as a series, like the X-Men should always be serialized. It should, like, I maybe am the one man on planet Earth who thinks that no X-Men movie should ever have been made except for that it made the superhero genre like into a bigger deal. But there doesn't need to be an X-Men movie. There's always needed to be an X-Men television show. There need to be X-Men comic books. But the nature of these stories, it's serial. You can't really expect to pack so much into an hour or two.
Oh yeah, that X3 was so bad. Trying to do the Dark Phoenix thing. Yeah, they're trying to do it again.
Like, it's like, so you've learned nothing. You learned nothing.
Yeah. Oh, you're having Phoenix for a movie, and then she turns. No, we're going right
into it.
People loved it because it was people loved it because it took like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and like we had the opportunity to we didn't even you had the opportunity to love Jean Grey as a character before that happened to her. We didn't even have the opportunity to like this character.
Totally.
It's like,
Yeah, because she'll be the Phoenix in like 10 minutes in, and
Yeah.
I totally turned off whatever the last X-Men movie was.
Yeah.
With
Oh yeah, when they were
Apocalypse.
like when they.
That was just so
I
bad.
was like, you really just ran full speed ahead into this. Well, all right.
Which is weird because I did like Days of Future Past, right?
Well,
that was
yeah,
the one
yeah, that was the
coming
one.
back.
Yeah, and I kind of liked it too.
Yeah,
I thought
it
it
was
was like
fun.
emotionally, like it felt like there was hope for the series, and they were like, no, there's not. Gotcha.
What do you think about? Have you seen like the new X-Men or the New Mutants trailer?
Yeah, I'm excited for that, actually. I think that's interesting. I think that they've made some weird casting choices, but
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I remember when they were like talking about Sunspot, and I
Mhm.
remember being like, "Wasn't Sunspot like black?"
Yeah.
And then like finding out like, "I was right. Like
Yeah.
he was black in the comics. That's
Yeah.
right."
Yeah, and they did that to Cecilia Reyes too. Like they were like Afro-Latina people, and they were like, not anymore. We just got some white folks, so
Yeah.
enjoy. And it's like that's a shame, but like in The Gifted, we do get our brown version. He's not Sunspot. They call him Eclipse, but it's clearly meant to be.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
and
cool.
so it's like, well, I mean, at least we get that, but it's like, come on, be a little bit more brave and just like cast brown people. Is it so hard? But you know, I think about it, it's like Storm had such a limited presence in the movies, which is criminal.
It really is, especially given who she is in the comics.
Yeah.
Like, how much she had to go off.
And I was thinking about this actually with The Gifted. It's like one criticism I have. It's like I'm pretty sure there's not one black person in that show.
In The Gifted?
Yeah, at all. Like, I mean, there's lots of brown people, which is great and everything, but it's like, what? They don't have one black. And it's like, there aren't that many black characters in the X-Men, but there are a few. You could find one of them. But I'm not really one. I am fortunately, I think representation is super important, but it's not like the beginning and ending of my interest in things. So.
Yeah, someone brought up a good point that I never thought about with it. Because I'm always like, I was like, why are they putting another white guy as Peter Parker?
Mhm.
And then people are like, well, Peter Parker's like, whatever, okay, you know, but like, shit, I forgot my point. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, oh, is it time for a Miles Morales Spider-Man movie? Maybe, and that would be cool, but that doesn't mean that I don't care about seeing Peter Parker ever again. And that doesn't mean that, like, these movies are automatically bad because,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, and it's like, okay, so could there be a black character in The Gifted? Certainly, and there should be, but that doesn't mean that, like, that there's not an evil effort to like exclude them. And it's like, I would rather them, you know, find a character that they're going to do something really compelling with. Like, if, for example, like they were to expand on like a Hellfire Club storyline or a Generation X storyline, and it's like you can use like Monet St. Croix or like Bishop or Shard or like those characters. Or, I mean, maybe they could just accept that Storm is dead, and I guess she's not anymore. But it's like, there are other characters, and it's like, or make one, you know? I mean, and I think that's something interesting they did actually that they did in The Gifted, and that they also did in the Runaways show, is, I mean, with Runaways, they were like, well, Molly Hayes will just, you know, change her race because it's not really integral to her character. And then Clarice Ferguson, who's Blink in The Gifted, in the comics, she's also Blink, but they were like, well, you can just make her Clarice Fong, and it makes no difference because she's a pink person. Like, a pink character with no known familial connections. Nobody will be hurt by this change in the character. And I think that it gave Clarice more depth, you know. And so I think that it's like, if you're going to make those changes, like, make them meaningful. I think that there's, you know, I think, you know, sometimes I think we get into this strange area when we're talking about representation where it's like, okay, representation is great and you want to see people like yourself and you want to see different kinds of people represented on television, of course, but not if it's just cosmetic representation. It's like not if there's nothing more to it than them doing that to show you without really giving you anything more, you know?
And that's like the main thing with like Marvel and what they did like the last few years where they were trying to bring in like a lot more like black and brown characters or female characters, but not in the offices. Like they weren't hiring women. They weren't hiring like black people to work at Marvel. They were just like, let's put, and it's like, it does matter. Like, I mean, of course, like someone explained it to me, or I read it online or something, like that feeling when you see your town on a movie, like it says Reno, Nevada, and it's like, that's, you know, that good feeling, like, but white people don't realize it, because like, it's just always there. Like, you're always going to have representation. Like,
and I think to kind of continue from that, like, line of thinking, it's like, you know, to go deeper than that, it's like, I think one place where Marvel kind of failed is a lot of times those storylines weren't really earned. You know, they were just like, here's Riri Williams, for example, Iron Man, and it's like, and they're just like, just accept this. There was no build-up really to that character, no reason for people to like that character. And except for that, it was like, you know, it would be the right thing to do to like her. And it's like, of course, she did have good stories and everything and all that, but it's like we never had really the opportunity to get to know that character first. And I could see why some fans would, and this is not that they're right, but I understand why some fans would resent that change happening, like in a book that they were purchasing suddenly, where it's like, now I just have to become attached to this character to which I had no attachment before. And it's like, and that's for those, like, maybe white fans or whatever who, like, are prone to getting offended by things like that. But then it's, like, for people of color who see those things, it's, like, on the surface, like, I'm like, oh, this is great to have new representation. But then beyond that, it's, like, seeing your town depicted in, like, some media and then them getting everything all wrong.
Yeah, you're like, no, that's not my town. Like, that's not even a street in the town.
I think about in Fallout New Vegas, there's, like, you can go to Boulder City, Nevada, and I remember being so excited to do that, just to see what they, you know, how they did it, and it was just so dramatically wrong that I was just like, wow, this is a waste. Don't even include the town if that's what you're gonna do, you know? Especially because they had gone to such effort in other games to, like, depict Boston correctly, for example. So, but...
yeah, that's interesting.
And it's like, and yeah, and like we were saying, they're not hiring more people. It's like, you know, it's kind of interesting to, I don't know if I really want to hear a story about a black woman written by Brian Michael Bendis, who has a great deal of difficulty writing women that are just an extension of what he thinks women should be anyway. And like, he's like, well, there's like my Kitty Pryde, Jessica Jones, like everybody, all these characters are the same in my view, and they all have the same voice, and then bitches who are evil. Like that's his understanding of women. It's like girls that I think I would like, and bitches who are evil. Yeah. And that's how he writes all of his, like, he writes interesting stuff, but his voice for writing women is pretty limited. And so him writing a 15-year-old black girl, and it's like, I don't need that from you. I don't think we need that.
That's so funny. No, it's good. I mean, and that's where they're just not, they're not getting it.
Although I will say, you know, a lot of people had praise for this. I mean, even though people are upset that Iceman turned out to be gay or whatever, it's like Sina Grace writing that book, who as a gay man, like, and like doing that, people were like, this series has a lot of heart and really is, like, it has a lot of depth. This series just got canceled, of course, but it was a good Iceman series, and for me, I think it was like one of the first times I was ever interested in Iceman as a character.
Totally, yeah.
And it's like, this is interesting. And I know a lot of people are like, well, he's in all these relationships, how could he be gay? And it's like, I don't know if... Another interesting comic book factoid that people forget about is that people speculated that Iceman was gay for decades. And, like, I remember in the 1990s, they really flirted with the idea, and I remember they kind of alluded to it with him not being able to control his powers and having so much self-doubt and blah, blah, blah. And they, like, used Emma Frost to make weird gay jokes about him all the time, back when she was not, like, totally good but not evil yet, and just kind of hanging out at the mansion, which is a weird trope of the 1980s and 1990s and, like, media in general that I love, is, like, bad guy staying at your house. Like, what was that, you know? I was thinking about that in a lot of soap operas where they're like, well, here is our mortal enemy who also lives with us and causes trouble here every day. Awesome. And it's like, why? You know, that would never happen in today's media where they're like, oh yeah, and your evil like stepmother like lives here, like.
That's so funny. I'm just at the part that Magneto's like living at the mansion.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, what the fuck is he doing here? Yeah. He kills, like, he's not a good guy.
Yeah, and it's just like, everybody is like, and that's the thing I also love is like when like the characters are like, why is this happening? But then they still kind of tolerate it. And that's exciting about the X-Men all the time because it always happens. Like, I mean, think about how many times, like, throughout the history, like, you'll see this as you read the X-Men. It's like Mystique, who has never been good, who's like never going to like be good. Like, they're like, oh, stay with us. Like, maybe you've turned over a new leaf.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's like Mystique will never turn over a new leaf, but I do appreciate the X-Men for really keeping hope alive on that score.
Yeah. That's, you know, and that's really what I love, and I think maybe why I got so attracted to comics. I mean, I've always read comics, but like why last year something just like, I read more comics last year than I think ever, and I think it's just that, always like, you know, with Superman, like, it just like always comes back to that hope, and like when the world's like falling apart, you're like, well, in these stories, the world's falling apart, but like they still have hope, and I think that's like just such a... Oh shit! Sorry.
Spooky.
Sorry about that.
That's alright.
Like realizing, like, oh, I didn't turn the heater on. But I just love that, and I need it. Like I think
it's so necessary, especially right now in a world where it's like, you know, for us, keeping hope alive is really necessary, especially because it's like, you know, in the world of comic books, it's very easy for us to think like, oh, dead people, they come back eventually, like no matter what, and like the status quo always kind of, you know, stays in that certain like area, you know, but in real life people die and they never ever come back, and the status quo shifts forever, and that's just all there is to it. So it's like the least we can do is keep hope alive and want to fight and to come together and do good things in the face of evil, you know. One hopes that's what we want to do, but I think that also maybe a shortcoming of our like media lens perception of like reality sometimes is that we forget that unlike in comics where like the lines between what makes a good person and an evil person are clearly demarcated, and like you know, all those things are very easy, and in reality it's like things are a lot more complicated than that, and the origin story for villains in comic books is usually pretty tragic and bad, but all it takes really to be a villain in America as a capitalist is just to want a little bit more money.
Fuck, dude, that's so true. Yeah.
And, you know, and we all... that's just like... I think about that all the time. It's like people are so easily motivated by just like really, really... not necessarily shallow, but like just really basic impulses. And I mean, think about like, I think so much about, for example, racism right now. And I mean, racism has always been a part of the fabric of maybe mankind, and especially Western society, and especially American society. But I think that this current iteration of racism, I think it comes from for people that are our age and that are, discovering racism as an activity that they really want to invest in. So many people are like, oh, they were taught that by their parents, they don't know better. It's like, no, actually a lot of people like discover like being racist and think it's kind of fun. Like they think it's fun and they feel powerful and they think it elevates their potential to do better than others, and it like helps them to feel better about whatever shortcomings they have. And it's like people don't realize that it's like racism is not just some like this the great terrible evil that's passed down. I mean, it is great and terrible evil, but it's not like some like otherworldly thing that like just occupies and possesses a person's spirit. It's really a very casual and easy thing that you can stumble into and really just kind of like.
Oh my god, totally. I mean,
that's the scariest part.
Yeah, I think about, you know, these alt-right guys are like I only get laid because of music. If I didn't have music, so I can relate to them in a way, in the sense that like women, like not that women I'm just like, I know if I didn't have music, how hard it would be to date. So there are all these guys that like hate, they have the worst time dating, they have no friends. Who can I find? Like, oh, other people just filled with hate.
It's their
and then
fault.
It's like, yeah, and so you get as a group. So it's like the first time. I'm of course like not defending it, but like it comes from these people not having anything. But then it's like, oh, but I've got racism, and like even though I hate myself so much, like now I've got this thing where I'm better than all these people and I'm better than women, and it's like that. You just, like you're saying, it's not something they're taught. They're guys that have been like, they feel like totally disenfranchised, and instead of dealing with their problems, like I always have this joke like, oh, you want to date Lois Lane? Like, are you Superman?
Well, exactly.
Like, well, they don't want to say like, okay, I need to work on myself. Like, there's a reason I don't have any money. There's a reason girls don't like me, and there's a reason I don't have any friends.
Yeah.
Or I could go on the internet and find a group of people that just
as
fucking hate.
Yeah.
And then that's going to give me that, like, dope, like, whatever, that anger dopamine or whatever it is. But, I mean,
And it doesn't solve the core problem, but it does create a whole lot of other ones. And, like, you know, then I do definitely think that a lot of racism and things like that, like, come from feelings of insecurity. And also, but I think that's, like, a special blend of insecurity and entitlement. These are, like, not just men who are disenfranchised. They're men who actually probably have, like, a pretty average experience of life in comparison to everyone else. But just are convinced that they deserve more. And they just, like, it just creates this toxic resentment where they're like, why don't I have everything that... You know, so I mean, maybe they come out of the box kind of like assholes, but then they like get like upgrades over time.
Well, I've hung out with people, and you're just hanging out with them, never said like a crazy thing in their life, and all of a sudden will like say something about Jewish people.
Oh my God, me too. I was just about to bring that up. It's actually, like, it's like where it's like you're just hanging Jews? Out, and then somebody's just like, yeah. And I remember a few years ago, like I used to be a part of this like Dungeons and Dragons group or whatever. And this one guy who we were all friends with just like randomly like just like came out like saying all types of anti-Semitic like stuff, and like my friends were like just trying to write it off as like a hilarious personality quirk, and I was like, this is deeply bizarre. Like this is really not like, guys, this isn't just like ha he hates Jews. It's like this man hates Jews like for real, and he's saying these things just like, and it wasn't just like a Jewish joke or something. He was like, you know, Jews are deeply toxic, selfish, and greedy people. And I'm just like, where is this going? Do you even know any Jewish people, first of all? But second of all, like, where is this coming from? And it's like, you don't realize that people just they form these opinions and they cling to them because they think they need them. And then they spread them. And
conspiracy theories working that way.
Oh my God. And oftentimes conspiracy theories and this kind of thing are one and the same too.
Yeah, they're very anti-Semitic a lot of the times.
Think about how many times people are like, the Jews are trying to form a new world order, and it's like, you guys, don't you have... Come on. And I don't know, you know, so in some of my...
We've never had a Jewish president.
But and so it's like in some of my doctoral work or whatever, I'm thinking like, okay, I'm trying to like think about ways to promote literacy to get people to, you know, read more carefully and like distinguish reality from like, you know, fiction, and to not fall for conspiracy theories, and to not become racist just because your friends are doing it, because that's really wild. And to, you know, really engage with reality as it is, and but then I find myself hitting a wall where I think, you know, some of these people have perfect access to literacy or like are very intelligent, and there's just a lot of emotional or material benefit in participating in these hateful modes of being. And so
yeah, totally.
And then it's like, well, what do you really do about that? I don't really know.
Yeah, when people like Ann Coulter are saying things that she doesn't probably mean, she's like a smart enough lady, but it's like she's like on, like it's like she's the fucking alter ego, you know, and she comes out, I mean, I don't know, I think she's a horrible person, I'm not defending her, but I know she said things that I'm like, you're not that dumb, and I know you're not, but you know that's gonna sell, you know, whereas like Donald Trump is almost like, he is that racist, really, so he's just like tapped into what these, you know, tapped into like this huge part of I mean, certainly I think for like white liberal America, they were just like, what? You know, and then black people were like, you didn't know, you fucking idiot.
And that's the thing I definitely think about. I can't believe how many times on Twitter I posted last year because I'd see so many people like, oh, this is no big deal. And I'd be like, look, what are you doing? You think this guy's going to win? Because they were like, no, this guy... Well, actually, I think about this to kind of take it back to the like conversation about comic books. Is I always hear people who are like, in America, they would never let a mutant registration act go down. They'd never have Sentinels, and it's like, bro, which America do you live in? It's like I think that those are like features and not bugs of American society. People love surveillance states in America, despite what they say. Yeah. People love. You know, I mean, people would love to, and Muslim registry, that idea is deeply popular in the United States, which is fucking nuts.
Yeah, he doesn't, when he talks about the wall, he doesn't actually give a shit about the wall, but every time he talks about it, everyone who wants the wall gets, like, fucking the dopamine back, like, the whatever it is, like.
Well, and even the wall is fucking absolutely nuts to me, because it's just like, this is some real simpleton shit, honestly. Because it's like a wall, you think a wall is like, we live in modern times, like we are literally living the future right now. We have virtual reality, we have fucking digital assistants surrounding us at all times, but what we need is a giant fucking brick of cement at will. That's going to stop our immigration problem once and for all. Is recreating, it's like Berlin Wall kind of didn't work out too well. And I always tell people this, I'm like, anybody who wants a fucking wall right now needs to think about the Maginot Line. It's like, all they did was walk around it. It's like, that's all they had to do. And it's like, well, what about boats?
Yeah,
like, what about fucking planes? It's like, there are very simple considerations that can be overcome here. And it's like, but surely a giant slab of concrete is like, and it's just like, that's just really, and I don't like to demean people's intelligence or anything, but that is just some fucking caveman logic that to get over a wall. It's crazy to me.
It's so stupid.
And it's like, I think
you couldn't have grappling hooks. Like, there's so many fucking ways to get over a fucking wall.
It's like, somebody just blow the fucking wall to smithereens if they really wanted to. Like,
you can't border patrol that, and it's like, it's not to be logical. It's to incite illogic.
Well, exactly, and I even think about. And it's like, I generally don't think that Donald Trump is an intelligent person at all. I mean, there's just very little evidence of that.
Yeah.
But then I think about how he frames things in very childlike terms for his supporters, and I'm like, wow, it's sad because he's not very smart, but he knows he's at least smarter than one guy. And it's like, I think, I think this may or may not be true. I'll have to look it up after this, but I remember, I think that he was saying that the walls would be clear so that we could see through them.
I would not be surprised.
And it's just like, and like people were like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's like, where are you going to get a fucking clear wall? Like, what are you doing? So it's glass now. I mean, it's not even cement, it's glass.
Even easier to fucking explode.
Just throw a rock at it.
Yeah.
It's like...
Source, like, do the... Like Batman shit.
Yeah. And so, it's just like, I hate shit like that. That's so sad. But it's like, what can we do to combat this desire for instant gratification and excitement, even as it pertains to evil? Because it's just like that. It's like, you know... There's probably a more organized way to go about racism. Not that I'd like for people to do that, so don't get any ideas, but it's like, but there's probably smarter ideas than a fucking wall.
Yeah.
And it's just like, dude, I just want everybody to relax a little bit more and be more compassionate and maybe, well, actually, so this is something that I was thinking about too. And I was going to say, maybe if people read more books and care about the humanities more, they'll be less evil. But that's not true, because I definitely have been reading like comments on, like when I read reviews about The Gifted, and people are like, I can't believe you guys are talking about politics and repression and blah, 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 and being social justice warriors in an X-Men show. And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean?
That's pretty stupid. That's pretty...
Dude. It's like, have you ever, where have you been? Where it's like, they're like, oh, like, I remember somebody was like making a comment, they're like, oh, comparing the plight of mutants to the plight of minorities, predictable for social justice warriors. And
That's
like,
hilarious. That's a 50-year-old. When was the first X-Men movie?
Yeah, it's like 1960 or something.
It's fucking
like,
old idea.
Me? It's like, but okay, if you think that's what's happening now. And it's like, but this is the other thing. It's like, I know these people must feel pretty fucking awkward in their stupid evil, because it's like, whenever you bring up any kind of dictator or point to any kind of evil behavior, they just automatically think you're talking about Donald Trump, and that says more about their psychology than it does about mine.
Dude, seriously, I mean, I don't know if you watch Star Wars at all, if you saw it, but like, people are like, I don't like that they're trying to depict us all right people in that movie. I'm like, maybe if you see yourself in like as the evil people, and that they've always been based off Nazis since fucking the original Star Wars. Like, yeah, exactly. If you see yourself in those parallel, like, you're
in trouble.
Yeah, that's on you.
And exactly. And it's like, they're trying to make us look bad, and it's like, well, I don't think they have to try too hard.
Yeah.
It's like, if you spent a little time in the mirror, you might recognize. Well, and that's the other thing. It's like, so many of these outright guys, like, definitely feel like they're being heroes and fighting for some, like, good cause. And it's like, you're the bad guy in this story.
Yeah.
And it's like, even in your own story, you're kind of the bad guy. And it's like, as long as you can own up to that, then fine. But it's like, so many people, God, it's just like naked, pure, just fucking malice. And they, everybody wants to frame themselves as the hero in their narrative, which, I mean, common ancient problem, but
some people are totally in the wrong.
Yeah.
Like, so in the wrong.
Yeah.
I always think that, I'm like, if you're in a club and everyone fucking looks like you, like, to think about why.
Yeah.
And if it's exclusion, you should not be in that fucking club. Like, that's not. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I don't know. It's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
And it sucks because it's one of those things where, like you were saying about, like, all the Facebook posts, like, how, like, I mean, I don't think people are going to be apathetic at all this midterm. I think they'll totally, a DC Congress and the Senate, and we'll probably have a Democratic president next time. Donald Trump probably won't win again. But when are the liberals going to forget and let another Donald Trump come back? Because they were so apathetic about who won versus, like, Hillary or Donald, and, like, saying, like, it's all capitalism, it's all the same, it doesn't matter who wins. It's the lesser of two evils. Good. Who's the lesser of two evils?
Well, exactly.
I don't want Magneto. Like, I want the guy who has less power than Magneto.
Yeah, and I find actually that in that conversation, because a lot of people are like, well, who are you to delegitimize my experience? I think that, like, that it's like, what I feel is just as important as, like, what you feel and blah blah blah, as far as, like, voting and blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, well, I understand that you have a lot of concerns, but I think that it's very important for us to at least preserve some of the systems that allow you to be able to express your opinion, because so long as you are having your temper tantrum and preventing us from protecting those norms, you will be the first among the doomed,
Totally.
And it's like, you are among the most, and you're among the most vulnerable. And that's not to, and that's, and when I say that people need to participate into sometimes, and they shouldn't always, but there is a time and a place to vote for somebody that you don't particularly like, or somebody who even who even is opposed to your beliefs in some way. Not always, but it's like, you do have to choose the lesser of two evils. And if it's really that hard for you to see the difference between the two, then, I can respect that, I guess. But for me, it's never been difficult for me to, I've never gone to a ballot and thought, oh, well, I don't really like this person, but this other, like, was I jumping, like, head over heels with the idea of, like, voting for Hillary Clinton? No. But that doesn't mean that I had any trouble marching my ass up to the ballot box to say, okay, well, Hillary Clinton, at least this woman, like, will like maintain voting rights, like, and you know, she's evolved on various positions in which I think that a lot of people don't give her credit for. It's like they're like she flip-flops, and it's like no, she actually just is a human being living in a temporal stream. So sometimes things change as you move along and you learn.
Yeah. Who's anti-war in the Senate? I mean, I'm sorry. Like when people are like, "Oh, she's a war person," it's like, well, we don't really have an option besides people that are interested in war. But
well, exactly. And it's like, am I happy about that? No. And it's like, would I like for somebody else to occupy that position? Certainly. But I would like to make sure that there's a pathway to that someday. So it's like, if that meant voting for Hillary Clinton yesterday so that I could vote for somebody better tomorrow, by all means, I can make that decision without breaking a sweat.
Yeah, dude.
Because it's like, instead we get to hang out with this fucking lunatic, and he's going to destroy us all. And it's really like, people don't realize that it's like, we're always moments away from just complete and utter obliteration. Like, I think about with this, like, thing with China and the, like, so-called, or not China, but with Hawaii. What a horrible mix-up.
Well, still, I mean...
Yeah. With Hawaii, like, being I mean, China is a whole other thing, but with, like, Hawaii and the missile, like, and everybody's like, oh, we're going to be blown to smithereens. And it's like, people think that that's like a no big deal, but it's like, what if people think that you can go to a bunker nowadays and like that you'll be safe from like nuclear warfare? And it's like, which bunker? First of all, that's question number one. And question number two is, do people not realize that nuclear weapons technology has become so more sophisticated that even if there was any such bunker, it probably wouldn't really hold up? Like, people don't realize that nuclear warfare is actually just the end of the world. It's not some post-apocalyptic, like, oh, we're digging through rubble. It's like, no, everything is gone and dead forever, and there's nothing anyone can do about it.
Yeah, like you were, I mean, I can't remember what you were saying earlier. I think it had to do with X-Men, but like, yeah, mutually assured destruction.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and, yeah, it's just, it's so fucking wild. I mean, there's unprecedented, the time we're in. Like,
and it's hard to think about, but we have to, you know, I don't know what you can do to impress upon people that it's like, actually we're in grave danger. But we are. This is a bummer talk, but...
No, I think it's good.
Important.
I think it's important.
It's like, people need to know that we are in grave danger, and I imagine that there's some awareness of this in like the public, like collective unconscious. I think that people are really stressed out and going nuts, honestly, and I fear for what that means for like public health, and I fear for what that means for incidents of violence in the public. And it's like, we have to figure out something sooner rather than later, because the world is in grave danger as long as nothing is done about. I mean, the least they can do is just muzzle our president. I mean, if we have to keep him, then shut him up, medicate him.
Yeah, totally.
Which is cruel. That's not necessarily the nicest thing in the world to say, but it's like, I'd rather our president take a pill and lie down than like sit on Twitter all day, like provoking nuclear warfare that will get us all killed.
Totally. And I think he's crazy for sure, because like crazy people think they're getting poisoned. And obviously he's the president, whatever.
Yeah.
But like that, but he's not. It's not like he's just started eating McDonald's. He's been fucking eating McDonald's and KFC and all that stuff forever.
Yeah.
And like, that's, to me, it's just like, that shows like if your level of paranoia that you think what president's ever been fucking poisoned?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
Presidents have been shot. That's it. The only way, like, you know, and like that level just goes to everything. And
well, it's like, you have to be a man with serious you've had to have done some bad shit in your life that everybody's going to poison you at all times.
That's so true.
That's crazy. It's like, well, and you know, I mean, the so-called, like, the alleged mob ties and things like that, he probably is a man in like grave danger, especially probably now. So I mean, in that respect, I guess I can feel for him, except for that his mental condition, I can have some sympathy for that without thinking that it should be my problem to the extent that I have to worry about my life.
Yeah, he's your president. Yeah, he's our president.
It's like, you know, go take a vacation. Like, you know, if you want to golf so much, do it every day for the rest of your life. Like, just please leave us out of it. Please leave us out of whatever this power fantasy of yours is, because you're gonna get us all killed, including yourself.
Yeah,
and imagine if these so-called bunkers really did exist where you could go for safety or whatever. It's like, then one of the people that survives nuclear warfare is Donald fucking Trump. Then it's like, that's how the world becomes hell, actually.
That's like idiocracy.
It's like it's like if you believe in hell, it's like what happens when the world is like reduced to dog dirt and like radiation, and then like Donald Trump comes out of the bunker and it's like, I'm still your president. Could anything be more fucked up? Jesus Christ.
Totally. And I think it's so interesting to be in your 70s. Like, is there a point when you're like, I want to do something good in the world? And he's just like, no, I want the 5 or 10 people in my immediate family,
yeah,
and like a couple other rich people to get like way more ahead. Like, that's, I mean, I can't relate. I don't know how to relate to him. I can't relate. I mean, obviously, but it's a very interesting thing to think like he wants to do nothing good with the opportunity of being president. I don't like the Bushes, but I can only assume they at least had something they wanted to do to make their name not be total shit.
Well, and I definitely feel that they did work, they did actual work for veterans, even though they created a lot of veterans, which is bad. They did like do a lot to like fund them and make sure like, you know, I mean, maybe not as much as they could have, and I'm sure there are plenty of other initiatives. It's like, what interests me about Donald Trump, I guess, is that even though he says oftentimes to his base that he's maybe the first president since Andrew Jackson that like has only done things to harm the people that have voted for him, except for his donors, and the people that he's installed. It's crazy because like people compare Donald Trump to Reagan a lot, and there is a lot of similarities, but there's so many more similarities between Donald Trump and Andrew Jackson, where it's like, you know, he was like, thanks for giving me all this fucking money, now you're sitting in my cabinet and like you can do whatever you want, and I'm like paying people or not paying people off, but like with, I think it was Deutsche Bank or whatever recently, where they had been criminally fined or something for some kind of banking scheme. You know, there's so many, and he owed that bank millions and millions and
Donald
millions
Trump
of dollars. Yeah, and he just pardoned them, and it's like, well, do you think that's any coincidence? Probably not. And it's like, nobody seems to care. It's not that nobody cares, it's just that it's something new every day. And it's like every single week we have 10 different Donald Trump storylines that are fucking us over. And it's like, God, like, do we need this? Like, is this what we really wanted? And then of course you see the fuckers on Facebook every day that are like, I think he's doing a great job. He's done so much to help us. And it's like, name one fucking way that you've benefited from this materially.
Yeah, they're not rich.
Yeah, you're not rich. Your life's not better. Your grandma's probably dying from colon cancer right now. Like, what the fuck? It's like, your taxes are going up. You probably don't, like, you don't make the minimum of $40,000 a year to benefit from this tax cut. So your taxes went up. Your healthcare your premiums are about to fucking skyrocket because Donald Trump pretty much just said to the healthcare industry, do whatever you want, guys, we don't really care. Like, which, I mean, not totally his fault, but he really just gave them carte blanche to do whatever they want. We're probably all going to be reduced to radioactive ash very soon, so...
I sure hope not.
So it's just like, so what part is the good part? Still no wall, and if the wall comes about, it will just be taken out of our taxes. So I mean, I guess he's doing a good job at being a fucking villain. Like, he's doing a great job at screwing everybody over.
Yeah, he's a total villain. That's a good point.
And it's just like, that's the thing about Donald Trump that interests me, is that it's not only the corruption like that's compared to Andrew Jackson or whatever, but it's just that the policies and things that he pursues are just so, like, nakedly malfeasant. Like, they're just, like, bad and mean. And the things that he does are bad and mean. And, like, the people who love him are they either love the badness and the meanness, or they like refuse to accept it, like to believe it exists. I remember one time, I can't remember what context this is in, but somebody commented on my like Facebook page, and because I had said something about Donald Trump that was unflattering, and they were like, Donald Trump is one of the kindest and most handsome men I have ever seen. And I was like, all right, kindness is one thing, but you go too far with that handsomeness. I'm just kidding. But it's like, but really the kindest man in history, not that no, he wasn't the kindest and handsome man I've ever seen. He's the kindest and most handsome man in history. In all of history, this is the kindest man. It's like in a world where Mr. Rogers once existed, Donald Trump is the kindest man in history. Like, all right.
And you know what? I think, and it really just comes. I mean, obviously, I don't know, but just all those speeches he gave, just being like, "You're the greatest." You're the
Look at my African American over there. Yeah, yeah.
Did he say that?
Oh yeah, there's a black guy at his rally one time, and he's like, "Look at my African American over there. Look at him. God. Aren't you the greatest?" I hate it, but I laugh at that all the time.
He's like, "I'm reporting."
Yeah, it's so funny, but
that is crazy. But it is like, cause so they just remember. Oh, and he said I was the best.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure he's fucking me over, but he said it's like the. Have you seen Dave Chappelle's new specials at all?
No, I need to watch that.
Okay, I won't even go there.
Mm.
But he's just got great, really great. Obviously.
Yeah, I need to watch that. Maybe this week, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he would be a villain in the X-Men. No doubt, he'd be like a trash.
He's like Mojo. That's the thing. Donald Trump
he looks
is
like
Mojo. He looks like him, but he acts like him. It's all about the fucking ratings.
That's really interesting.
So there's that about Donald Trump and Mojo. That's worth looking into. They do look alike, but like it's like, yeah, that's something to think about. It's like if you read a Mojo storyline anytime soon, you will see the similarities, I think. But yeah, I don't know. Fuck that guy. He's pretty awful. I wish he would do one good thing, like anything.
Yeah.
I wish that, like, so maybe this is like, maybe the Democrats can start complimenting him and telling them like how much people would like him and like how high their ratings would be if he decided not to do the whole wall thing and decided to like stop fucking everyone over. Like, maybe if they make him feel good, like, he'll do what they want instead of the Republicans.
That would be really interesting.
Because I think that he's just somebody who's led by whatever feels good,
Yeah.
Like, whatever feels good to him personally. And I think that when people get, like, all randy over the fucking wall, he's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's what I want to do. Like, like, his donors are like, we are going to have a great fucking time. And also, this is the thing, it's like, he probably, I know this is really mean speculation and probably not true, but I think it is, that Donald Trump has just got to stop doing the goddamn cocaine with all of his friends at Mar-a-Lago or whatever, and like fucking, like, just chill.
He does something. I don't know if he does drugs, like cocaine.
Yeah.
I think he does like prescription drugs he gets from his doctor.
Yeah.
And like, I'm sure it's the same. Like he just gets like, some kind of a methamphetamine.
Yeah.
And like he doesn't, because it's from his doctor.
Yeah, and that's true, because he's like,
I've never done drugs.
I've never drunk. I don't drink.
Like,
yeah, it's like,
and you're like, you're on something, man.
Dude, he's crazy, especially because it's like, look, I'm not saying that like I'm up doing drugs all the time, but I've been around the block before, and I fucking know that when I'm up at 4 a.m. tweeting like fucking crazy shit, it's not because I'm not doing anything bad.
Yeah, totally. That's so funny.
It's like I definitely am not just like, well, I'm having a Diet Coke at 4 a.m. and I'm tweeting up a storm of rain. It's like, no, I'm probably at least really, really fucking drunk. So
that's so funny.
So it's like, that's what I think every morning. I wake up and I see his tweet because I wake up really early for like work and to like just like have a peaceful day and try to like go through a practice of like making my breakfast, working out, going on a walk, reading, blah blah blah, doing all that stuff. It's like I'm up at 4 a.m. trying to cultivate an environment of peace just to get through this bullshit day, and then my president is out probably on some wild ass drug tweeting like that so his button is bigger and more effective than North Korea's. It's like, well, great. And I feel bad because at first I used to be so horrified, but now I take like a little bit of like nervous delight in reading Donald Trump's crazy tweets because it's just like, wow, how will he doom us next? But
That's so funny.
I wonder about what our future looks like and like, how much trouble we're in and what will the hangover of this administration mean for the future. Because, I mean, imagine, I have some friends who are like diplomats from Australia, and I remember when this was all first going down, they were talking about how a lot of people in like diplomacy circles are thinking, well, what do we do in, like, how do we all work together without America and think about getting through this world without American leadership, because we cannot rely on them anymore. We see now just how fragile that system is, and we can't rely on them for anything.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's really bad for our future, and that's probably economically even, I imagine that could be really bad for us in the future. But in terms of morale and politics and leadership in the international stage, that's really bad, and especially because isolationism maybe at one time could have made, or would made America like powerful and like great, but it's like America's whole position in like the global order has been, it's the fact that we are not an isolationist state.
Totally. We've been invading countries like
yeah, which
since
is
I was
terrible.
a little kid. So it's
Which
like,
is
how can
terrible.
we be saying we want to be isolationists when we also want to spread democracy everywhere?
Exactly.
Like, that's so illogical.
Yeah, and it's like now we don't know what we're doing. Nobody knows what's happening. It's just that we're all in trouble. Everybody in the world is in trouble. So I guess we just have to organize and make sure that we do some kind of voting to make sure that there are checks and balances put back into place, because it seems that Republicans have no interest in preserving and that's a
The battery died. I'm not sure where we ended. I don't want to.
that's fine. It's just
But to the point about fuck, I don't know what I was gonna say. Yeah, I mean that we have to
organize and teach
Yeah.
and to share and to and to teach compassion like as a practice of being, like, and it's something that we do for ourselves and each other every day. I think that's maybe one of the most important things that we need to do, is to like learn how to listen to each other and to elevate each other more and to do things like that, and to focus less on like, I'm not somebody who's like everything needs to be communal or things like that, but I think focusing on community enrichment and things like that is really important, and like bringing out the best in others, and and also creating environments where failure isn't something that we have to fear so deeply that we sabotage others in order to make sure that that's like,
Yeah.
like I think about, so to give you an idea of this this concept of like destroying or dismantling environments where failure is like a fatal idea or fatal thing that happens, is that I remember watching this documentary where a woman's like saying, well, I want to get rid of other races in this country to give my children a better chance at success. And it's like, that is such a deeply entrenched fear of failure and fear that you won't have access to resources, that you're willing to put other people's lives at risk or to outright eliminate them. And it's like, if we can dismantle systems that make people I don't think that that's the only reason, like, I don't think fear of failure or anything is like the only reason why she thinks that way. But I think that when people are faced with scarcity, and when they're faced with the idea that failure will destroy them, and when they don't have very much compassion for themselves and people don't have compassion for them, and they don't feel listened to and things like that, all of these things mix together in such a perfect way that their stress response is to be destructive toward others and ultimately toward themselves as well. And so what do we do to combat that? And I don't think that it is everybody's labor to kind of come forward and create those environments, but those of us who do want to do that and do want to create those spaces, let's participate as well. I think that those people who want to create spaces of compassion add something very, very important to the idea of of the resistance. You know, we need those people who go out and fight, and we need people who do the work of direct action even, and we need our protesters, but we also need people who care and nurture others, or care for and nurture others.
Totally. That's awesome. Yeah, I totally agree, and it's like that too. It's like with going back to you were saying like the how you think, you know, there probably are some principled Republicans. Well, the idea of republicanism itself isn't unprincipled, and the idea of like conservative. I'm not a fiscal conservative because I just don't. I'm just not.
Yeah.
I think if like Canada has figured out a way to like feed people and give people health care, we could probably do that.
Yeah.
So it's like, but that always exists, that kind of battle between like liberals and conservatives. But it's like maybe it has always existed too as a racial like thing too. I don't really know now that I'm thinking about it. You know, maybe it's always like there's I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think that sometimes humans like move towards strange. I mean, tribalism for whatever reason, like manifests itself. I mean, think about how people become fans of musicians and become so bitter towards each other sometimes. Like, or people sports. People are bitter sports fans, and politics are much the same, but they don't have to be. And I think that if we take a moment to check ourselves in that thinking, then maybe we can do a little bit more, you know? And it's like, if you're going to think about yourself as a part of a group, and I hate when people get into these platitudes, but it's like, really think about yourself as a part of a nation or as a part of humanity rather than a Republican or a Democrat or something like that. And it's like, for me, that's where my politics come from primarily is, all right, well, what is really, really serving the community and bringing the best out of everyone? I'm not somebody who will sit here and say that I'm a progressive. I mean, definitely I've come to a place where compassion is a key part of my understanding of how to conduct myself, but that wasn't always true. And I definitely know that a lot of my liberalism and progressivism in general come from more of a pragmatic place. And it's not just that I want people to be fed and alive, but it's that I think that as a society we can enjoy a higher standard of living if we just raise the lowest rungs of society up a little bit more. Then, you know, what is it? A rising tide lifts all ships or whatever. And it's like, I believe that, and that's where a lot of my progressivism comes from. Is think of all of the ingenious people that we're missing out on because they are suffering in the streets, and think about the people who never get to realize their potential. Those are not the only important people. All people, and like I think, deserve to fucking eat and not to freeze to death in the streets, certainly. But, I mean, if you are somebody who thinks of yourself, or if you're somebody for whom, like, compassion and caring for others is not really high on your list of things you care about in your politics, at the very least, think about how much better life could be if we weren't missing out on so much potential. And be pragmatic in that sense.
You got it, man. No, seriously. That's awesome.
So,
should we wrap up?
Yeah, because I think we've really, this has been wide spinning.
So where can we, like, I'll put the links and everything for music, but is there like a spot you like people to go to the most, like to try to...
Yeah, they can follow me on Instagram just at Evyn Tyler, and then on Twitter you can follow me at Franc Friday, and someday, maybe in like a couple of days, francfriday.com will be up.
Fuck yeah. Hell yeah.
Cool.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. That was just awesome. Like, super fun talk.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Heck yeah. No, that was awesome. It was like, I think I said on the video, but like, I'd like totally seen you at bars and be like, I want to go. I don't think he knows me, but I love his music. So it's awesome to like really actually have a cool conversation with you.
Thank you.
All right. Evyn Tyler, Franc Friday. Check him out. Thank you, folks.